Okay, I'll call this meeting to order at 6:34. We have a lot of people here tonight. I think most people have used Google Meets and Zoom meetings, but whenever you're not presenting or talking, if you could mute your mic, that helps a lot with feedback. And if you have a question or a comment or anything like that, you can either physically raise your hand and I'll call on you, or there's also a button at the bottom that you can electronically raise your hand. Okay, so first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up is agenda review. I have no amendments. Julie?
No, I don't think so.
Perfect. Then next up, we have a wonderful announcement. Dan Palmer and Dina St. Moore both got for their respective positions as principals, got Principal of the Year. And just so proud of them, and thank you. What an honor. I mean, wow. We're just lucky to have two in our district. I mean, how lucky are we? That's just awesome. Congratulations to both of you.
They'll both be recognized this summer at the Vermont Principal Association Leadership Conference in the beginning of August. And we're looking forward to that. I believe it's the first time two principals have been recognized in the same district in the same year. And they join August Company because Jay Hartman and Joyce have both been Principals of the Year in previous years. So we're very lucky.
I just want to say thank you guys very much. I don't want to speak for Dina, and I'll let Dina speak, but I was very humbled when I received the call, and it's great for, you know, the amount of support, just the amount of support from the board, from everybody in the admin team, all the teachers and everybody that kind of put their name on the application. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. Very humbling, and one of the few times probably in my life I was ever truly speechless. So I had no idea what to say when Jay Nichols called me. So I was like, yeah, just completely dumbfounded. So thank you, everybody. And again, thanks for everything.
I'll echo Dan. My conversation with Jay, first words out of my mouth was, I getting it because I was retiring. I thought that there was some little catch to it there. But as Dan said, it just, and Justina knew I was getting a call from him, and we were in a meeting, and she was really mad that I didn't take his call. And I said, this is really important. We had to fill our subs for the next day, and I figured that Jay could wait, so please don't tell him that. But it was just really exciting. And I think, as Dan said, we work with great people. I think the biggest thing is that the kids and the teachers in our building were so excited for me, but really for us. And it brought some light to this year. And I know Dan is feeling that way too. So thank you very much for your support, but it's truly an honor. And just to receive it this year with Dan is really super. So thanks.
Congratulations to you both again. That's what an honor. And like you said, Julie, what awesome company to be amongst. So next up, which is an interesting segue, we're going to move into visitors, and we have a visitor, a Swanton principal candidate. So Julie, if you want to introduce.
Yes, I think we also have other visitors too, Chris.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure you knew. So we have gone through a process, and we're here to introduce the board to our candidate, Christopher Dodge. Chris is currently principal of Fletcher Elementary School, and we're very excited to bring him forward to the board. Chris, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really a pleasure to get to spend some time with you this evening. I have to say, you know, I've been on both sides of the table a lot when it comes to hiring folks and also participating in hiring processes myself, and I've rarely walked away from one of those processes feeling as excited as I did the other day after I left this group. I just got such a nice sense of the collaboration, and such a welcoming community. So I really appreciated that. I really, one of the questions that I would expect you might want to know is, why Swanton? Why would I pick Swanton? And I wanted to just tell you some of the reasons that I made that decision, and hoped that you would make the same decision. And the first reason is really on your focus on social emotional learning. That is really where I feel I have a tremendous amount of expertise, really building school community, making sure that all of our students and staff feel welcome and honored and heard. Relationships are my top priority. I talked about it during my interview process, and I think that really is the cornerstone of everything we do, is building those strong relationships. So being able to learn a little bit more about the work that you've done with your social emotional pieces and school climate was really exciting to me, because it is also a priority of mine. I am a big fan of PBIS, and I know that you also use PBIS. Our school here in Fletcher has been a PBIS exemplar school for the last 6 years. I've been here at Fletcher 7 years. And beginning in my second year, we've consistently been a PBIS exemplar school. So we too have worked really hard on the climate here at Fletcher. Another really big piece of work that we've done here in our supervisory union is around equity. And so I was also really excited to read a little bit about your work with equity and your consideration of a statement of a commitment to equity that I read a little bit about. Part of my process has been going back and reading a couple of years worth of board minutes, just to get a sense of the things that you all are working on. And I was really excited to read most recently about your conversations around equity. I think that that's really important, and I've done a lot of professional development recently to support that effort. I'm also very excited to have an opportunity to, as part of an extension of the equity work, to work with the Native community. That was another piece that I really took out of my interview process. I'm really intrigued by that, and how we support our Native community, and make sure that they are an equal and included part of our school, and allow them to teach us, and be part of some really tremendous learning from the Native community. So that was another piece that really excited me. And kind of the final piece for me was really around looking for some additional challenges. I've been a principal for 16 years now, and most of those years have been in smaller schools. And so I'm really looking forward to learning new systems and learning with new people about a larger school and a larger system. And I'm thrilled to potentially have the opportunity to work with Justina as a collaborator in the same school system. I've not had that opportunity in the past. I've been the sole administrator in my building, and sometimes that can be a little isolating. And so I'm really excited about that collaboration too. So those are some of the things that really attracted me to Swanton.
Don, I see your hand up. Don, you're still muted.
Julie likes it when I'm muted. She has to remind me. Chris, at the appropriate time, I would like to make a motion on behalf of the committee that was, I guess you'd call the selection committee, or the interview committee, or the recommending committee. So I don't know what the next step is, if other people want to comment, but Mr. Chair, when you're ready for a motion, I'm ready to make one.
Okay, we do have an agenda item for that later.
Okay.
For the motion, this is Mr. Dodge's opportunity to meet and greet with everyone, and we do have some Swanton residents here too, so I'm not sure if they're here for the entire meeting or to meet Mr. Dodge, but if anybody else has any questions or comments,
And I have no problem waiting till the appropriate time. I just wanted to make that statement, not get lost.
Yep, no problem. Thanks, Don. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. A lot of screens. Take me a second here. No, I don't see any. Okay. Thank you very much for coming.
Of course.
I'm sure we'll have a lot more discussion later.
Great, thank you. I'd like to stay with you for a bit if you don't mind and just listen in.
Absolutely.
Great.
Okay. Now we're still within visitor comments. Does anyone else have a comment or a question? Seeing none, we can move on. First up, or next up on our agenda is approval of March 9th minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve those. Okay, Steve's the first, a second. Toby's the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving March 9th meeting minutes, raise your hand. Motion carries 6-0. Okay, next up is our elementary data presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Just to introduce myself to Chris, since we haven't met Chris, I'm Kosha Patel. I'm the Director of Curriculum, and welcome. And I'm going to have the coaches who are presenting today with me to introduce themselves. But I'm going to start by presenting my screen. We have a slideshow for you with some of our trends for the elementary data this year. So bear with me for a minute. Are you able to see the slideshow?
Kosha, right now I'm seeing your screen. I'm not seeing the slide presentation.
Okay, just give me a sec.
You want to present a tab rather than your screen.
Can you see it now?
I can see your drive with lots of folders.
Oh gosh, sorry about that.
Would you like me to? Oh, do I?
Kosha, I'm happy to present if you want. I have both screens, so it's up to you.
Go ahead, Deb. I'll stop presenting.
You don't have to. I just was offering.
Deb, you can go ahead and present your screen. Good idea, Dina.
Chris, just so you know, Terry says she's on the call. She is here in the meeting and can hear. She just can't unmute herself.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Deb. And thanks everyone for your patience. So one of the big questions that everybody's been grappling with is how are our students doing? We know that we've been very challenged with the pandemic since last March. And it's hard to believe it's a year since all this happened. But we also wanted to make sure that our students are doing as well as possible given the circumstance. Next slide, Deb. So I'm going to start off by introductions, and our literacy and math coaches in each of our elementary buildings have done a tremendous job, as they always do, but given the challenges of this year of looking at data and then creating appropriate strategies to respond to that data. So I'm going to start out with the Highgate coaches and have Edna and Kristen introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Edna Yannico, and I'm the literacy coach at Highgate Elementary School.
And my name is Kristen Hughes. I'm her counterpart, the math coach at Highgate.
And the Swanton coaches, Deb Boucher and Jess Borbo.
I'm Deb Boucher, and I'm the literacy instructional coach in Swanton.
I'm Jess Borbo, and I'm the math coach in Swanton.
And the Franklin teacher leaders, we have Bree Trainer and Heather Digby.
Hi, I'm Bree Trainer. I'm the literacy leader in Franklin.
I'm Heather Digby. I'm the math teacher leader in Franklin.
Excellent. Thank you. So let's move to the next slide, Deb. So the objectives of today's presentation is really to report to the board as well as members of the community to look at trends and needs in math and reading proficiency, to really report on what we are seeing for student growth, and then to share some next steps as we respond to this data and keep thinking about how we work on our continuous improvement process. What we are using this year is the STAR 360, which is an online assessment to really screen students in K-6. And this is really helpful to us to identify students who are on track to meet grade level standards, and also to identify students who may be at risk and need some kind of supplemental instruction. So we administered the STAR Early Literacy for our students in K1 who are not yet reading, and then STAR Reading and STAR Math for students in grades 1 through 6. This is a computer adaptive test that takes about 20 to 25 minutes. And the early literacy screener has about 27 items, and STAR Reading and STAR Math have 34 items. Students were screened in fall in October of 2020, and then another round of assessments took place in January. So we were able to see what progress students had made from fall to winter. As each classroom finishes their assessments, teachers are able to get screening reports, and they get these really colorful graphs, which basically tells them which students are on track and which students may need a little more attention. So as you can see in the report over here, they're color-coded in blue, yellow, and red. And the blue kind of indicates students who we want to keep a watch on. And then the students who come up in yellow are the ones who really would benefit from intervention. And then the red show us those students who need urgent intervention. So as we generate these reports, teachers look at these in PLC meetings and work with coaches to identify which students need the kind of services that our interventionists provide in both math and literacy. We also provide diagnostic assessments for those students who are reading below the 40th percentile, because this is just a screening assessment. So once we know that some of the students are not on track to meet grade level expectations, then certain diagnostic assessments are provided. These are given one-on-one, most of them, and teachers are able to identify specifically what that student's goals might be for intervention. Where are the gaps in learning? What are their strengths? And then how do we build on those strengths? So what has been implemented so far? We, as I said, did our screening in fall, and then progress monitoring has been happening since January when we did our second round of assessments. And basically what this has helped us to see is which students are showing adequate growth, and then which students are not showing as much growth as we would like, and then putting into a practice some of the interventions that are available in our 3 schools. So we're going to start with Kristen and Edna presenting Highgate data, and I wanted to just share a little bit of demographic data about Highgate, because that sets the context for as we look at the numbers and proficiencies. So Highgate has currently 235 students in K6, and the ADA, or the average daily attendance for the first 85 days, was 93.63. When we look at this attendance data, because we know how linked attendance and achievement are, it shows a fairly high number. This includes both students attending on remote days when we were hybrid at the beginning of the year, as well as when students were in person. And sometimes it doesn't give a fully accurate picture, because a student could be present during the remote days. If they just logged into the LMS, they would be considered present, but they may not have completed the work that teachers may have assigned them. So just wanted to give you a little context around what that ADA means. And now I'm going to turn it over to Kristen and Edna to talk about Highgate.
Thanks, Kosha. All right, so as Kosha had sort of mentioned, most of the data being present today is gathered from our STAR assessment. However, we do screen kindergartners a little differently. So the STAR assessment doesn't actually assess kindergarten, actually goes 1 and up. So we actually have an additional screener that MVSD has developed last year, and that's the kindergarten math screener. We use this screener 3 times a year. And it does the same purpose that we use for the STAR assessment. It actually helps us consult on the next steps and identify what we need to do with some of the kids along the line there. Students who don't meet the benchmark at that time of the screener may have further testing. They may work in a targeted small group for support, or they may be reassessed. And you can see down below, there's some of the skills that are assessed throughout the year: accounting and subitizing and conservation of number, when you have objects in front of you and then we move them around, but we don't remove any of them, or there's still the same number of objects in front of you. And then addition story context, and later on a subtraction story context in there too. So I just want to kind of put that out there as far as saying the data that we gather is incorporated into the STAR data, but it's just gathered a little bit differently. Thanks, Deb. So this is kind of what we're looking at for our fall to winter data for grades K through 2 in math. You can see that as we broke it down into the 2 tables, the fall is on the left and the winter is on the right, and we broke it into 2 categories: students that were at or above the benchmark, and then students that were below. So in our K through 2 range, we had 50% of the students coming into school that were meeting or above the benchmark for grades K through 2. If you jump over to the winter side, you can see the increase of about 23%. And that increased up to 73% of our students that were now at or above the benchmark. What you don't see on this slide is sort of the numbers and what it means in the classroom level. So we had a 23% increase, but what that actually means in Highgate is that there's 20 more kids that are now at or above that benchmark. What's even neater, if you want to dive into the data a little bit more, is that of the 36 kids that we sort of identified as needing some assistance in the fall, more than half of them now are at or above that benchmark. If we take a look at the second slide, we're going to take a closer look for the 3 through 6 range. And we can see, as Deb progresses, thank you, that same data set up in a similar way. In the fall, we had 61% of our students at or above benchmark. And then in the winter, we had a slight increase. I do math, I don't do literacy, a slight increase to 64%. So that 3% increase is a combination of things. We had about 8 or 10 more kids that actually met the benchmark, but we did have a couple of kids that actually did not meet the benchmark who did in the fall. We'll discuss a little bit later in the slides. There's a couple factors that kind of play in here as far as maybe attendance and lack of in-person instruction or order of the units that were taught as far as those students go. But an increase in some grade levels and a decrease at other grade levels sort of still presented an overall increase of those students that were meeting at or above that benchmark there too. All right, Edna.
Thank you. Okay, so just like in math, in literacy, kindergarten does not in the fall take the early literacy or the STAR reading assessment. So what we do is we administer the PASA and the letter ID. The PASA is from Highgate and the letter ID is from Fontes and Pinal. So what the PASA assesses is how well readers notice that letters represent sounds and spoken words are made up of individual sounds. So instruction in phonemic awareness gives readers a way to approach sounding out in reading new words. It has been one of the best early predictors of reading success. Letter ID involves being able to say the names of both upper and lowercase letters of the alphabet quickly without having to think very long about the letter. And we can go to the next page. Okay, so we can see here in our fall data, we have only grades 1 and 2 because of the assessments that we gave in the fall in kindergarten. They really didn't match up well with the STAR data. That's why you can see a discrepancy from 46 students tested in the fall to 71 students tested in the winter. Our kindergartners were screened with the PASA and the letter ID, and that is on some different data. So what we found out when we started this year is that first graders weren't quite ready for the STAR reading assessment. They suggest that students have 100 sight words or have scored a 775 on the early literacy, and our first graders weren't there yet. So what we did is we gave them all the early literacy, and we had a handful of students that were able to take their STAR reading assessment. So that's why in the fall, because so many of our kids came in not quite ready, that our numbers were so low. After they got that first instruction, they made a dramatic improvement to 62%. So what we had found, like in kindergarten, so the first 2/3 of the year in kindergarten, students learn all those foundational skills, right? So what happened was when we shut down in the spring, they didn't have that chance to take all those foundational skills and put them all together. So we just found that they weren't quite ready when they came in. Okay, we can go to the next one. So we had a slight improvement from fall to winter in the STAR. The majority of our students did grow though. They grew within the band. So they may have scored a 450 in the yellow, but later on in the winter, they may have scored 565 in the yellow. So there was definitely growth, but it just doesn't show up in this data. Okay.
Thank you so much, Kristen and Edna. We are going to go to Franklin, and this is the demographic data for Franklin. We have 119 students, K6, and the attendance rate for the first 85 days was 94%. And I'm going to turn it over to Heather and Bree to talk about Franklin's data.
So one of the benefits of going second is that Edna and Kristen explained a lot of the background on the assessments. So I don't have to do that part. I just have to share our information. So like Kristen said, the kindergarten students took a math screener that was developed within our district with a consultant. So at the beginning of the year in October, our numbers are at or above the K-2 students was about 70%. We tested 47 students. And then in the winter, we have an increase. We had students move in, so we then tested 2 extra students than we did in the fall. And so the at or above the benchmark for the K-2 kids in the winter was 80%. And just like Kristen and Edna said, there are students who improved. So you can see we had 6 students improve. Some of them may have been students who were below the benchmark, and some of them may be students who were really close and then met the benchmark. But we also had a lot of growth within their benchmark. As Kosha said at the beginning, there were a lot of different colors. We get different colors depending on where kids fall. So you may have had a student who was in urgent intervention that has moved now to intervention or on watch. So there was growth within different bands as well. And then the 3 through 6 data. So in the fall, our grades 3 through 6, we had 55% of students at or above the benchmark. And in the winter, we had 62%. And part of the reason we may not have seen as much growth in the older grades is that they were hybrid longer than the younger kids. So that is a factor as well. But again, we did see a lot of growth within the color bands for many of these students. So we're seeing progress, which is excellent. And we're looking forward to seeing what it shows at the end of the year.
I will also echo lots of what's already been mentioned, but I will say that we in Franklin, this was the first year that our Franklin students have taken this type of computer reading assessment. And as you've heard, the kindergarten students didn't take it in the fall, but they did take it in the winter. In the fall, for grades 1 and 2, we had 67% at or above the benchmark. And then in the winter, as you can see, we had a slight increase with 69%. Again, the first time our kindergartners taking that type of assessment. So overall, those standards that had been taught thus far showed up with some really positive results, and those that weren't so positive are coming up in the units to come. They hadn't been priority standards just yet, so we're looking forward to seeing more results at the next administration. And here's our Franklin, our 3 to 6 data. Again, a slight positive growth trend. Here comes my echo again. Those standards that have been taught, showed positive results. The older students stayed in hybrid longer, which may have been a factor in how much growth was made. And you'll hear more about that in the coming slides.
Thank you so much, Heather and Bree. And we are going to look at Swanton's data. The total number of students in K6, 523, and we had 96.13% average daily attendance, which again, it includes both remote as well as in-person days. I'm going to turn it over to Jess and Deb to share Swanton's data.
All right. The best thing about presenting is going last. So we basically have nothing more to share but the data. So go ahead and get started with Swanton's. You'll see Swanton's math data K-2 in the fall was about 46% of kids proficient. And then in January, in the winter, when they were retested, it went up 12% to 58%. a lot of the things that Kristen and Heather have already stated are the same for Swanton. Those kids worked pretty hard both times. We are seeing some growth, but again, they might not have made that jump up into the green, the highest band. And so we aren't seeing a huge growth as far as the data goes at or above benchmark, but we are seeing a lot of growth within our school and within each grade level, which is nice. And the same for our kindergarten too. They did not take the STAR in the fall, but they do take the case screener fall, winter, spring 3 times, just like the other elementary schools. You can go ahead on to the next one, Deb. On our 3 through 6, 51% were at or above in the fall, and 54%, it doesn't look like a lot, but we are seeing a lot of growth within those classrooms and within those grades. And so we're just looking for even more growth come spring.
All right, I'll stop being Vanna for a minute and talk. Okay, so the Swanton reading data, basically the same thing everybody else has said, and I don't mean to be flip about that. It's just that we're kind of in the same. We're all in the same boat as far as that's concerned. The only difference between us and Highgate, as far as we're in the same boat as Franklin, as this is the first year that our students have ever taken a computerized test. So our kindergarten through 4th graders have never seen a test at all that's done on the computer. So this was kind of a learning experience for them. So they were, what we started with was we tested again the K through 2 in the fall really only represents our 1st and 2nd graders. So we had 135 of them, and there was at 17%. And in the winter, we included the kindergarten in there as well, and it turned into 37%. So the same thing everybody else has been saying. We're seeing growth within our areas below or at or above, but they might not have made it quite to the next level as far as getting to the at. We're really pleased that some of the other types of assessments that we're finding them very comparable to this one. So the STAR is feeling like a good representation of where we started at. And then as kids get better and better at learning how to take the test and do testing again, since they haven't been tested really, and they hadn't been tested since probably January of the year before. So it's been a long time. So now I'm losing my skills. Here we go. All right. Our 3 through 6, we tested 249 students in the fall, and we tested 252 in the winter. Some of that was students that were moving in or have come back from BTVLC or homeschool. Different things like that have affected Swanton a lot. We've had a lot of changes in that area. So we had 50% that were at or above in the fall and 54% in the winter. And again, our interventionists are especially reporting the fact that through their intervention with students, and they've been seeing all types of students this year, they've seen a lot of growth within those areas. So I don't think there's anything else we needed to add, right, Kosha? Everything else has been said.
Thank you so much, Jess and Deb. I wanted to present this data because I think that when we talk about student achievement, it's not just about what the instruction looks like in a classroom. This year, because of a lot of students missing school, we are seeing huge numbers for days missed. And if you just look at this data, it shows you how by school, students have missed between 5 to 10 days, 11 to 20 days, 21 to 30 days, and then 30 plus. So in Franklin, we've had 86 students miss 5 or more days. In Highgate, 128, Swanton, 189. And we know from the research that there is a very strong linkage between attending school and student achievement. So just wanted to keep this in mind that Many of our students were unable to be in school because they had themselves, they were sick, there was a family member was sick, they were in quarantine, or they had other reasons why they were unable to be. But this attendance has definitely had a huge impact on student achievement this year. Next one, Deb. This is Heather. So Heather's
Yes.
going to talk a little bit about the conclusions we draw from all the data that we've looked at.
So overall, in bright blue, over the last 2 years, we've had a lot of interruption to in-person learning, and therefore we've seen quite a variation in skills and abilities, more than other years, the range of things that students need support with. This year, we've really focused on health and safety, which impacts instruction when there's classes quarantined or students need to quarantine, et cetera. And our intervention services have been different depending on whether they're in the classroom or in different locations and things like that. So health and safety has taken a priority, which has affected our instruction and intervention services. We're focusing also on social emotional learning. And big surprise, but probably not, reading is best taught with a teacher present and student-teacher interaction. So being able to be more consistent in school, kids with teachers, helps out the reading in the lower grades. We're making more progress since we've returned to full-time and in-person learning. And one of the biggest ones is, as mentioned, the STAR 360 is a screener. So schools are taking all of this data that we get from the screener, and we're looking at it individually and analyzing it within our buildings. So the STAR 360 shows what students can do on a computer independently. And like was mentioned before, many of our K-4 students in the district, this is the first time they've done a computer assessment. So more specific analysis is happening at the grade levels in all of our buildings in order to determine what intervention services are needed for students. It could be that they're missing skills or concepts from prior years, which we dig into a little bit, or they may be missing skills or concepts from current grade level units that have already been taught and they need a refresher in those. So there's kind of a balance of both of those things. And all of that analysis is happening a little deeper in the buildings.
Thanks, Heather. So we just wanted to inform you about how we are responding to this data. And one of the things we do is we look at the data as a district and make some decisions about what might be next steps at a district level, and then also look at individual school needs and think about how do we intervene or what strategies do we put in place. So from the district perspective, the first thing we did as we started looking at this data is we knew that we had additional needs to fill student achievement gaps this year. So we hired 3 additional certified part-time tutors, and they all started working in each of our buildings in March. We also contracted with the Stern Center to be able to provide some structured literacy instruction for our students who are most at risk. The third thing we did is the coaches have been working really diligently on looking at our priority standards and reprioritizing those given the number of instructional days we had left in the year. So this has been a constant process of let's look at our priority standards and see what is it that our students absolutely need to know before they move to that next grade level. So that work has been going on constantly. We are also in the process of hiring a social worker because, as I mentioned, we have seen a lot of student absenteeism this year. And then since January, Wendy, Tanya, Beth Ann, and myself have been meeting to really create a robust summer program. We always provide summer tutoring, but we feel that this year the needs may be higher. So we've been in this planning process since January. And Deb is going to talk a little bit about some of the strategies in place at school level.
I am. All right, here we go. So at the school level, the first thing that we had on our list of things to tell you is that the data analysis is being used to monitor student progress, just like Heather was just actually talking about in the last slide. Teachers are taking all of the data that they get, both formative and summative, and they are putting it together and making decisions on this kind of leads us into the next bullet, which is flexible intervention groups in math and reading. So they're using that information to consult with interventionists and making decisions about which students need what at that time. We're really working a lot on essential skills, and those are those bare bones skills that kids probably did not finish getting the year before, or that are just missing this year. The difficulty with the flexible intervention groups is they're not as flexible as we'd like them to be because of health and safety concerns. We can't intermix classrooms of students, so that's always a challenge, which is kind of limiting, because back in the day when things were quote unquote normal, we could mix students and put students with like needs together, and at this point we can't do that as much, but it is still happening on a very, very good level at all of our schools. So they work on those skills that are missing from previous grade levels, or they might be skills from prior units that are still within the grade level they're in now. The ongoing coaching is happening for all teachers in all buildings. We're especially focusing a lot on our first and second year teachers, especially those poor first year teachers who have just walked into a hornet's nest, basically, and we're just trying to keep them in the business, basically, at this point. But our coaching is really happening both one-on-one, small group, and with through our PLC processes. So that's the next bullet, is we still are having our ongoing PLCs. No matter what's going on, we still find time for those. We did them virtually through all of our remote learning, and we're continuing to do them. If people have to go remote, we still include them in our in-person PLCs here at schools. So during those times, we're working with formative assessments, we're doing unit planning and various other things that come down the pike that we need to do. But it's really, really all about focusing on very student-centered. And I think that's one of the biggest things I'm most proud of in our district, is that we do make sure that those are very student-centered. And then the last thing that's happening just in Highgate and Franklin so far, it will be happening in Swanton soon, but right now they are involved with the Stern Center experts, and they're still doing the consultation that actually has been going on for more than just this year. It was last year as well. So they're working with them for a lot of the early literacy and basic literacy skills that they're working with their students and teachers. So I'm sure there's a whole bunch more, but we didn't have time to put them all in here.
Deb, if you can go to the last slide, please.
Yeah, I'm trying to get there. Sorry about that. All right, here we go.
So we want to just end by telling you that we are in the process of thinking about what do we do going forward. And so, as I mentioned, summer planning is going on as far as providing tutoring, crossroads, extended year services. And then our recovery planning team is going to start meeting on Thursday to really collect data from all the schools, to really think about what needs we have as far as the district is concerned, and also individual schools, and then to create an MVSD plan for recovery, which then will get submitted to the Agency of Ed. So we've given you a lot of information, and we have all these experts here. So I'd like to ask if anybody has any questions, and we'd be happy to answer them. So Deb, if you want to stop presenting, we can see if anybody has a question.
Hi, I'm on the phone, so I don't know how to raise my hand.
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Lauren Howe, a parent in the Swanton school, and I was trying to listen as closely as possible without having those slides in front of me. So I appreciate how clearly people were speaking for those of us that did not have the information in front of us. So I have two questions. One is, will that slideshow be available to parents so that I can reference it, go back and reference it? I'm curious about most specifically about how Swanton's data compared to that of Highgate and Franklin. And I really had tuned in to the Swanton part, to be honest with you. So I'm wondering if that will be available. And then my second question is around the Howard Center, or I'm sorry, the Stern Center consultation. So maybe you could answer question one, and then I can either wait my turn or ask the second one.
Yeah, we can certainly make the slideshow available on our website, so no worries.
On the school district's website, in the same spot I would find the school board minutes, or where would I look for that, do you think?
Yeah, we can post it there. Julie, that's okay, right? Okay, yeah, we will post it where the board minutes are.
Great. And I can't tell if other people have questions, so I can either wait to ask another one or...
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So my question is, at the very end, I heard that there is consultation with the Stern Center for Highgate and Franklin, and that has, it sounds like that has been ongoing since last year. Why has that not branched out to Swanton?
Great question. So last year, Highgate and Franklin did the whole Lead to Read program, which is basically the Stern Center provided the Mind Play course, which is a 30 to 40 hour course that teachers took. And it really is about the science of reading and how do you build those early foundational skills. Last year, Swanton was really immersed in math menu and training their teachers in math. So they decided to wait and finish all the K-6 teachers getting math menu training before they jumped into the early literacy. So next year, Swanton is going to have the Lead to Read program with the Stern Center. And so they will be getting the Stern Center coaching for all their teachers next year.
Bummer. My kids are in 6th grade. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your answers.
No problem. Any other questions?
Luann.
Maybe not a question, but just a comment on how, you know, several times it's been commented on about how the quick return to in-person made a difference. And I won't belabor that point, but I think that it's an important one to be sure that we carry forth. And also just kind of like looking at the days missed slide, you know, of, you know, not knowing if that's because of an actual illness, quarantine, and, or, you know, who knows. But if, I guess, having a really, a different maybe quarantine plan, I don't know, and maybe it's too late in the year for this, and so that's gonna be what it is, but, you know, it didn't really, you know, or at least I was unaware of what the options were for people who were going to be out for an extended period of time, or I just noticed that it was mentioned several times, a link between the in-person time with students and teachers. And so thank you. It was a good presentation.
Sure. Julie, did you want to address the quarantining requirements?
Yeah, I think I want to make it really clear that when we're talking about the greater number of attendance challenges that we faced, that it's not a blaming kind of piece, that we are in an extraordinary school year. And we understand that when somebody is identified as a close contact, or if a child has sniffles, and ordinarily they'd go to school with sniffles, but now we have to have that child stay home, that it really just is a much you know, it's a much more difficult circumstance, one that we share with everyone in Vermont. We're all following the same guidelines. So we just need, that was just a piece of data so that we really understand that our goal is to have more in-person learning, to have more targeted intervention when in the summer and in next school year. Hopefully we will not have the same level of restrictions on the integration of students, the grouping of students, and let's hopefully we'll not have as many positive cases where people need to quarantine and miss school. So that, you know, I would love to not have health screenings, and I would love not to have children's temperatures taken when they come in. All of those things have been required and very important. But again, in no way a blaming, because this is an extraordinary year. But the reality is we have had less contact time with students, and that's an uphill battle.
Julie, can I just add to that? I just want to say when we talk about attendance too, it's not even just kids. Staff are, you know, have to follow the same health and screening guidelines as the kids. And I can only speak for Swanton, but when we were operating on some of our hardest days, down 19, 22, 23 staff, and that wasn't just a one-day thing. That was a, you know, weekly, 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row running. That's going to have an impact too on student learning and consistency for kids. So it's student attendance, but I also think even staff attendance is a big part of just the struggles that we all encountered this year.
Okay, Don has his hand raised, and then Joanne after Don.
I'm going to defer to Joanne. She'll have a better question, and then I'll follow up. Go for it, Joanne.
I don't know if I have a lot of questions, Dawn, so I'll leave those up to you. I just wanted to first and foremost thank the coaches for joining us today. I'm not sure if we've ever had them all, you know, group in at a board meeting, but thank you so much. I think we're a nice board, so I hope you guys don't ever shy away from coming back. So when Kosha asks you to come, you guys are going to be jumping up and down with joy to come to the board. Please, we love to hear from you. And so I am a parent, but maybe I'm going to speak more as a board member on the comment of Luann for, you know, the missing attendance. Like, I see these numbers and I really like these numbers. I could have a 2-hour conversation with the coaches over these numbers because they really interest me. But I understand we are in COVID-19. I think the improvement, obviously, from fall to winter is great. And there's no doubt in my mind that spring's going to look even better. And I believe as a board, it's probably our responsibility, or I don't know, to make sure whatever summer plan is going to be put out there, coaches, Kosha, whoever chooses this summer plan, that as a board, we're supportive to that, because that's what it's going to take. Like, whatever happened in the past year, and it's going to be like 18 months, probably, we can't go back. It is what it is. And we just have to look forward. And as a community, as a school, as a board, as parents, as families, we all have to support each other, you know, of what can we do, because it's unfortunate, but it's our students that are hurting over this. And as parents, obviously, we want the best for them. And we want to know, why didn't my child learn this? And it's okay. Like, we're COVID-19, we're going to get through it, but it's going to take work. And I want to be supportive to, again, I can't speak for the whole board, but my vote will always be to be supportive for whatever the summer plan is to help our students. Sorry, Dawn. I didn't have.
Don't be sorry. You're not a new board member now, so you need to speak up like that, you know.
Okay. So I just want to thank the coaches. I do have questions, but I think that'll be for another time.
Thank you, Joanne. You took at least half of my speech, but that's good. I'm proud of you. Okay, so I guess I want to thank you. I think it's a great job. I would like to, in the future, if we get beyond this virus, I would like to sit down as a board and maybe spend a couple hours. I mean, I have a whole bunch of questions, and I'm not going to ask them tonight, but I agree with Joanne that as board members, the only reason I run for the school board basically is, well, number one, Mrs. Collins wants me out of the house, but number two is to make sure we're giving our students all the academic challenges, all of the opportunities we can to grow and to be good citizens and come back on the school board somewhere. But no, I really think that this is the type of thing that boards need to know. We don't need to do it. We don't need to micromanage. We need to know. And so here's my question. Why can't we, and I'm asking as a former math teacher, why can't we get the data 3 through 6? Why can't we get it broken down 3, 4, and 5, 6? Because I'm interested where some of the kids go astray with their math abilities. And I know I'm old school, but know your multiplication tables. I don't care how you get them, but get them. And so when you present the data in the future, rather than going 3, 6, and I have no problem with pre-K 1, 2, but could you break it out 3, 4, and 5, 6? I know you don't want to break it out by grades with small schools. People go, aha, you know, that's Joyce and kids or whatever. But as a board member, it would help me better understand why you're doing intervention and where you're doing it and why. So that's my question.
I'm going to defer to Heather. Heather, can you respond?
We can break it down 3, 4, and 5, 6 at another time if you would like. I think we just kind of combined groups 3 through 6 together, grades 3 through 6 together, because those are the grades that take the SBAC as well. So they always kind of get clumped together whenever we're doing stuff. Within our buildings, we are breaking down and looking at what 3rd and 4th graders are missing. And a lot of it is whole number operations type stuff and some beginning fraction stuff. And then 5th grade and 6th grade really get nailed with decimals, and then finalizing all the fraction stuff. So that's kind of where they go from there. But that's something that we didn't even really think about. So that's something we can think about and at another time to break it down like that. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And I want the other people present tonight to know that in my 50 plus years in education, Heather Sweeney was probably one of the best students I ever had.
Thank you so much. And Don, just to take some of the responsibility, I actually asked the coaches to report the data K2 and 3-6 just to be cognizant of time, because you know, your agendas are always full. We would have given you much more information, but that would have probably taken the whole board meeting. But we can certainly do what you requested.
Thank you. Nice job.
Thank you.
Julie and then Steve.
Hi, Terry is driving with do not disturb on her phone, so she can't unmute. And she wanted me to share with you all how she just thanks everyone so much for their wonderful report and just how valuable she thinks the information is. So I wanted to make sure I shared that on her behalf.
Steve.
Okay, great presentation. I appreciate everything from all of you. I've had an issue personally at home. I'm not so about reading, but the spelling side of it. We seem to spend a lot of time on math. What about the spelling? I just have a problem with it, and I've said it for 3 years at least. Don't understand, and where are we going to go with that?
I'm going to defer to the literacy coaches. Deb, do you want to talk about the work you've done for word study?
Sure. Steve, you're right. That's one of the areas that everybody is really struggling with, is trying to, it's called conventions when we talk about it in our or PLCs, and part of conventions is spelling. So the encoding process is so much more difficult for many kids, more so than the decoding process of reading. So the spelling part, as far as what Swanton's been doing the last few years, is I think it was 2 years ago, actually 2 Junes ago, so not quite 2 yet. We actually put together a word study scope and sequence so that we could address those kinds of things, including the conventions part, and which also includes spelling. But it's not just the spelling part of word study, but it's also the vocabulary, the meaning part, and the parts of words like the affixes and root words, base words, and those kinds of things. So we actually have one now that we were supposed to pilot, and then we got kind of thrown back into remote learning last year. So we didn't complete our complete year of pilot. So what we've done this year is we're working with PLL, and that's professional literacy community from the state that are working with us. And we are actually right now, Edna and I and Bree and Sarah Gates from MVU are actually on the group in that group with the consultants, and Coach has joined us as well. And we're using the Swanton scope and sequence as just our bare bones, kind of our skeleton. And then we're building from it and starting with kindergarten all the way up to 6th grade. So we're hoping by the time we finish with this process that we'll have a scope and sequence for the district, and we will pilot it, and we will see if that makes a difference. There's a lot of reasons, and we could take all night talking about this because it's one of my favorite things to talk about, but there's a lot of reasons why it's not working well for kids right now. And to think that going remote or hybrid or in any other state besides being right next to students and making them accountable for their spelling or those types of errors, that's just made things progressively worse than they were before as far as that's concerned. Teachers have been talking about it a lot, and that's why we took this initiative to kind of get this going. And so we're hoping that this hard work that we're doing and working with some very, very bright people that have a lot more experience and are out there in the world of word study will really help us a lot in our district. So we're prepared to apply it. We just have to get it done, and then train teachers on how to use it well, because it's great to get all these things in order, and then you can't just hand it to people. You have to give them the professional development. And as you've heard, we have to decide if it's math or if it's literacy or how we do it. There's just so much to learn. But I appreciate your frustration because you're not alone. Everybody's in the same boat. So I hope that helps me answer your question.
Thanks, Deb. I appreciate that. But I was going to be an English teacher. So when I have to sound out what she's trying to tell me on her Christmas list, that's where I get a little frustrated, saying, how come you don't know how to spell that? Right. But she's working on math all the time. So I would love it if we could spend a little more time on not so much reading, but writing.
Yeah. And the research that's out there right now says that writing took the biggest hit during COVID. So because of it's mostly the accountability. When you're not interacting with students, immediate feedback, it doesn't get changed. Kids will just leave things the way they are and not go back and revise or edit. And so that's where we're at, and we're going to take it from where we are right now, and we're going to keep pushing to make it better and better. But you're right, it's all about learning different rules and things that aren't the English language is, as you know, is not a very easy language to learn all those rules. But through the mind play, through the work with PLL, we're hoping that it's going to make a big difference.
Well, on that, she's in 4th grade. I don't want to lose it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments pertaining to this presentation? Dawn.
I think we have said it gently to the team, but I'm going to speak as one board members. I think we need to do what we really need to do, what we want to do, no matter at the cost, to get some real great things going on in summer school or Saturday school or whatever you come up with. I think as a board, we've been very supportive. I think we'll continue to be supportive, but I think this summer is an opportunity that we can't lose. We have to maximize it. And I know Julie is a good leader, and she certainly has no problem spending money if she thinks she's going to get a payback. But I would say, I think the whole board would agree with me. Tell us what you want to do and ask for the support you need to do it.
Well, you will definitely be hearing more about our recovery planning in the upcoming months. We are not going to be having our usual continuous improvement plan. We are going to be having a recovery plan. The data is being submitted in a month to the Agency of Ed, and then we will be developing a plan. We'll be working with our Agency of Ed representative, and the plan is for multiple years and will be tied to our use of ESSER funds and the American Recovery Act funds that we'll be receiving over the next several years. So we'll be very planful in the areas of academic achievement, social emotional learning, and student engagement, attendance, and truancy. So we'll make sure that all of our strategies and all of our expenses will be tied to our data and how best to leverage student improvement in all three of those areas. So a lot more to come. So it's not just about summer, it's about multiple years.
Joyce.
I think probably people already realize this, but I just have to say it. We are definitely looking at summer and everything we can do for summer, but this data has been looked at already, and more data from this initial screener, and so many things are already be putting into place for kids. Like, we literally, for every one of these kids, have next steps. What's happening next? And it's not wait until summer, I'll tell you that. And yes, we're going to have a really robust summer program and have tutoring over the summer, but there are, in every school, I'm sure there are things happening right now for each of these kids. I mean, I just look at the kids who originally needed urgent intervention in the fall, and I just wanted to cry when I saw how many fewer, or how fewer there were on the winter data that needed urgent intervention. So, you know, it just, all these people are working every day to already be putting things into place. When we look at this data, tonight it's kind of like an overall, an overview, but they are looking at this data with every teacher in their school and saying, for this kid, what needs to happen to help them? And it's every kid. And so I just want to make sure that everybody realizes that we're not saying, oh yeah, here's our data and we're coming up with a great plan for the next 3 years starting in the summer. It is happening now. We've started tutoring already, whether it's the Stern Center tutoring, we have teachers tutoring after school right now. We have homework clubs in the after school program, the interventions that are happening out in the hallway, interventions in the cafeteria because they can't have kids in the same room. And I mean, they are all over. Everybody is working so hard on this, and I just had to say that because yeah, we really want to have some great things going on this summer, but there's already great things going on, and how we're trying to help all these kids. And the growth that's happening, as the coaches pointed out, they might not have gone from one level to another, but just to see how much every single kid grew, whether they went from one level to another. To me, that's what it's all about. It's about every kid showing growth, whether it's the kid in the class that things come the easiest to, or the kid that struggles the most. And I'm sorry, my dogs have squeaky toys out. So, but anyway, I just had to say there's a lot of things happening already to address this data and what needs to happen. So, and we're looking forward to all the other things that are going to happen this summer, but it's happening now too.
I'm not seeing any more hands raised. So I would like to thank Kosha and all the coaches. That was a great presentation and a lot of information. And I do agree with Don. A little deeper dive later on would be great. But this was a great 10,000 feet look. And look forward to more data. Thank you for all the time you put into this.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on to the elementary administrative updates. Due to time constraints with a full agenda, they're not going to go through and read their newsletters. But if you have any questions for the newsletters that are in our shared drive, feel free to ask now. Or if you have any comments. Seeing none, we will move on to new business. And the first up on new business is our flag policy for adoption.
So you have had a first and second reading of the flag policy, and it has been warned for more than 10 days on our website. We would be looking for a motion to adopt it.
So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to adopt our flag policy. Toby's the first. Jen's the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I guess we're ready to vote. All those in favor of adopting the flag policy, raise your hand. Motion carries 7-0. Next up is our audit update information.
Hello, everyone. Haven't been to a meeting or seen you all for quite a while, but I'm sure you're all aware that financial audits across the state are running late this year for a number of reasons. Typically or historically, we've had to have our audits completed and finalized and submitted to the state by the end of March, which obviously is coming up very quickly. Because of the virus and issues with the new PowerSchool software, the state is extending this deadline to the end of June, which I believe we should be able to meet that. We're waiting for our first draft of the FY20 audit, and Laura will be reporting to you when we have received that. So I don't know if there's any questions, but that's what I have to tell you about the audit.
I do know that I just think it's important to point out also that the auditors had to audit the ESSER and COVID federal funds. Just recently, they were given directions to do that again. So there are a lot of complicating factors that are leading to the delay.
Thank you.
Well, I have.
Oops,
sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
Rebecca, Becky, will we have access to those audit reports prior to them being approved or disapproved?
Sure, that would certainly be something that you'd talk to Laura about, but yes, I don't see any reason why not. We get drafts.
Yeah, I know I did in the past, but I was just wondering if maybe we'd be able to take a look at them and kind of have an idea ahead of time. They can be thrown into the shared file or whatever.
Sure.
So I was just curious.
Yep, that shouldn't be a problem.
Once
Thank you.
we receive them, we'll put them in the drive, and then the board accepts the audit reports when they're completed. So absolutely, you'll be looking at them.
It's good to see you, Becky Hart.
Well, thank you, sir. Nice to be seen.
When they go into the drive, old guys like me need to have a reminder that they're there.
We'll let you know. Okay.
Yeah, count me in on that too, because
Okay, we'll just send out a general.
I'm right behind him.
Okay.
Okay, I got one little edit for our last flag policy vote. The vote was actually 8-0, not 7-0. I didn't realize Terry had voted via phone and Julie. So the vote for flag policy was actually 8-0, not 7. Okay, thank you for the update, Becky. Now we're on to postage meter lease.
Okay, our postage meter lease is up for renewal. We have a new machine that we would like to lease for the next few years. We're presently paying about $66 a month. The new lease would actually be $1 less a month, so it will save us money and give us a new machine. So I just need approval for that, to approve the lease and authorize Chris to sign that as board chair.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the postage meter lease and allow the board chair or vice chair to sign it. Steve's the first, Toby's the second. Any discussion? Peter.
This is the first I've seen this. I was just wondering a little background. Is this just so we have postage on letters? I'm not familiar with it. That's all.
Yes, we run all our mailings or any correspondence through the postage meter rather than buying stamps. So a lot of mail goes through here. So
Okay.
Postage meters are more efficient.
And Peter, the advantage too is that we pay 51 cents for a letter, and I believe 55 cents is the letter that is what we pay. You know, if you're just a citizen, you know, an average citizen, what you pay if you don't have a postage meter. So it is a saving.
That's what I wanted to hear.
There you go.
Any other questions or comments or discussion, I should say? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the postage meter and allowing the board chair or vice chair to sign, raise your hand. Motion's 8-0.
Thank you.
Let's see. I lost my place. Under new business, next up is the Swanton principal hire, which we could also have a possible finding for executive session for this. So Don, you're up.
I would suggest that we wait until after executive session and have Julie talk a little bit, maybe, and answer any questions that might arise and confirm the salary and that type of thing. So I'll take a pass on it.
Okay, we'll table it until after executive session. And lastly, the superintendent evaluation task force. Unfortunately, I don't think Terry can join in on this conversation, but I reached out to Terry this week and asked her about if the evaluation tool is ready and so that we could evaluate the superintendent. And we were thinking of the best way to do it is to set up a small task force to go over the evaluation and present it to Julie. I was thinking personally that obviously the board chair should be involved. And then I definitely think at least 1 or 2 people from the board's goals group should be involved. And then anybody else that wants to do it. So any volunteers? Obviously I volunteer, and then anyone else?
Chris, I'm not volunteering, but is it the step would be that each board member would then send their evaluations to that committee? Is that what you're thinking?
We could be. We're going to get together and discuss exactly how to do this and how to include the rest of the board without having this be a meeting agenda item.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris.
Chris, do you want to split it up amongst the schools?
I don't think it has to be.
Okay.
Terry just volunteered, which is good because that fulfills our board group. Our vice chair is not here tonight. I didn't know if he wanted to do it, but if anybody else wants to, I mean, we can have up to 4 people. Can't go over.
I think either Devin or the clerk. I think the clerk or vice chair, one of the 2 should be on it. There are.
Devin was, yeah, I agree. Devin was quite involved.
So we'll volunteer Devin. If he doesn't come, I guess we'll just volunteer. So right now it's myself, Devin, and Terry. Anyone else, or are we closing it out at that? Jen. There we go. We got 4. So I will. Oh, Toby, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question. So the tool, the evaluation tool is already complete. Is that correct or no? Or is that what this task force, I guess, is coming up with?
That I'm not 100% sure on. I believe it's complete. I haven't had a chance to really sit down and talk with Terry exactly. But I do believe it is complete, yes.
Yep, Terry, I believe she shared it. The committee shared it with the board at a previous meeting. So the tool is ready. You also have my goals. So I think this committee is really looking at how best to gather the data to compile and create an evaluation.
And the time frame, as far as like when the evaluation wants, I guess, completed, or I guess, well, typically, I don't know how it works now, but in the past, it's typically one person has been designated to meet with Julie. It's typically the chair to go over the evaluation. So I guess I'm just looking for the time frame of that.
I don't have a nailed down time frame yet. That was
okay.
Going to be our first agenda item, is to nail down the time frame. But I will say we need to move along quickly. We didn't do an evaluation last year, and that was one of our. We had a board retreat this summer, and that was one of the big topics, is that we needed to create a job description and do proper evaluations. And that this would be our first full one.
Okay, great. This is my first year back on, so I'm just, watching it all. The only thing I would add is I think that's like one of the only, I don't know if the public really realizes, one of the only, or one of the most influential things a board can have over the direction of a school. So I think it's very important that we get it done this year. I mean, it should be done every year for sure, in my opinion. So great. I look forward to contributing, but I don't need to be on the task force or whatever. I'm assuming we're all going to have input when the time comes.
Yes.
And to piggyback, I'm sorry, this is Lauren again on the phone. To piggyback on Toby's comment about, that probably the public doesn't realize, or the community doesn't realize, that this is part of the board's role. I'm wondering if, because I have never heard of this as a teacher in my own school, and new to attending these meetings about an evaluation such as this, does the board intend to seek more of a 360 evaluation where you seek input from the community, or is this really just between the board and the superintendent?
Be honest with you, I haven't really thought about that yet. That's a very good question, and that's something we can discuss when we meet.
Okay.
Don.
I want to come back to Toby. Toby, when we had our retreat and talked about it, I think we were looking at an earlier point in time in the year, once we get into a cycle. A lot of things have come up with the pandemic. I think we've been in our budget, but I would expect it would be happening earlier in the future and not talking about it in March. I think, as I said, that was part of a discussion that was going on. Was that a parent who just commented?
Yes.
I don't know about her district where she works, but I will tell you that, having worked in a number of districts and consulted in a number of districts, this is probably one of the things that most boards don't do very well. And I think this board has made a commitment. We want to do it very well, and we want it to give Julie feedback so we can continue to improve. But for me, from my point of view right now, and the other 8 board members can disagree, I think what we need to do is get our process implemented and work with the board and Julie, and then from there we can decide to go beyond. But I would be interested, not tonight, but when you talk about other school districts, I've seen many of them where this just does not happen. Does not happen. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, I would agree with Dawn. And this is why in the future, we definitely want to be done in March, not starting in March. But with everything else going on, we're a little behind the 8 ball. But we're going to move this along and hopefully fairly quickly too. So as of right now, it's Jen, myself, Devin, and Terry. We'll set up a meeting fairly soon, and we'll get cracking on this one.
You know, I know this has been a lovely, oops, sorry, I gotta sign up, hang up from that one. I know this has probably been lovely with me being on mute, but I'm back. But I did want to add about the public to just address some of that. I think we're pretty far along, and I think we're going to do a great job on this evaluation, this assessment. And I would say one of the things we don't want is any surprises. So maybe further down the line, we'll be asking for more like a 360 or something, maybe. But for now, it wouldn't be fair at all to do that at this point, I think. So my 2 cents.
Thank you, Terry, and welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll figure out a meeting time fairly soon and send out an email, see what works for everyone. And obviously it'll be a virtual meeting. So next up is, let's see, old business, and we have carryover discussion.
Well, again, this is not really an action item for tonight. We have been having some conversations in the facility task force about the possibility of using unexpended funds, undesignated funds for some projects, and the facility committee will be working with the facility directors at their priorities to be completed the rest of this year and moving into the summer. So it will be a returning agenda item, is I think what I'm trying to say.
Right, we meet, I believe, next Monday, or the 5th.
The 5th.
Which is next Monday, isn't it? Or am I wrong here? No, I guess it'd be the Monday after. And there's a lot to start there. A lot of planning. EEI is going to start presenting. I think some of their assessments are back. So there's going to be a lot of moving parts moving forward.
There is a copy of the most recent financial report in the drive also for your review. I think the carryover figure is pretty consistent with what you've seen over the last few months. So I just want to let you know it's there for you to look at.
Thank you, Becky. Okay. Let's see. Next up is the annual motion for teacher contracts. We had tabled that from last week. I believe Julie did some checking and we are good to do this motion. If you want to give a little background on that.
Yes, absolutely. And I said to Dawn how much I dislike being completely wrong about things. Luckily, it doesn't happen terribly often, but you know, I worked in another school district once upon a time, and they did this way. And Dawn had questions about it. Really, should we be doing it like this? And I did check with Sean Toohey. And I just want to make sure I have the right tab. Here it is. And he said, you know what, Julie, Mr. Collins is right. I think you should have a motion when you hire new teachers. So I worked on clarifying our procedure. And so the motion that we would like to make every year is that we're authorizing the board chair, vice chair if the chair is not available, to sign professional educator contracts on behalf of the board after the recommendation for hire by the superintendent. That would automatically be any renewals, because if a teacher is up for renewal, that is at the recommendation of the superintendent. And then we have our process for hiring new staff, which will include Bonnie coming to the board with a list every meeting with who's new to be hired.
I'll check tomorrow.
And then we will have a motion after the fact hiring those new teachers.
Just a second, Julie. Miss Howe, can you mute your? Thank you. Go ahead, Julie.
So really the only change is that each month when you see the list of new hires, that you'll make a motion approving those hires. And it's all right to do it retroactively.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Don. You're muted, Don.
Thank you, Julie. And if anybody really wants to know why I was such a bear on that and bringing it up, if you go to Title 16, Chapter 53, this is a sentence, I'll read to you. It says, a contract between a board of school directors and a teacher shall not be valid unless the same is in writing or partly written and partly printed in triplicate and signed by the teacher and by a majority of the board or by a member of the board or other person, and this is where it really kicks in, who has been duly authorized by a majority vote of the board at a regular meeting to be filled with the board on the contract in question. And so if they didn't have that little phrase in there on the contract in question, you could do the broad thing. So anyway, I'm not always right either, but I just want to get us in a good place legally. So thank you,
Yeah.
Julie.
And I appreciated that, Don.
Peter.
Yeah, I don't know. I just a little uncomfortable with this, with the fact that, you know, we set out our MVSD school board member job description for our board members, and providing fiscal oversight is one, and we have on there approved contracts. And I don't have any problem with this setup for contracts and teachers that, you know, we already have that have already been hired, but it seems like new teachers, it doesn't really seem like the board is, it seems like the board is approving it after the fact. So if we hire, if the chair signs a contract, isn't that binding? What happens if the board, for whatever reason, has a future hire or somebody that's been hired that the board doesn't agree with and doesn't approve the contract? What happens then?
They wouldn't be hired. Which is why making the motion after the fact is what binds it, according to our legal counsel. So if it didn't happen, and you could switch it so that Chris doesn't sign the contract until it's been approved at a meeting. The challenge is principals always want that to happen, a signature on a contract to happen as quickly as possible. But it is completely up to the board which procedure you feel comfortable with.
I'm speaking for myself. I personally would feel more comfortable having the board's approval before we have it signed.
I have to agree.
And again, I'm talking new hires.
Yeah,
Julie. I have a question here. Are the board members who have advocated for board signing off before a signature goes on the contract? Are you saying is that at a board meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
I would just be the voice of you know, I know how hard it is to hire qualified teachers, even new teachers, and we are often racing against the clock. We're Chittenden County folks, and who are offering more money, and you know, especially in hiring season, if that board meeting doesn't happen at a time that's super convenient, there may be these candidates who feel like they want to sign their name on a contract anywhere. I mean, I know that was me when I first graduated my teacher ed program. If someone was going to offer me a contract, I was going to sign it. And if we are waiting for that to happen, I think on balance, we'll end up with less qualified candidates. And I know, I don't know if Yeshua was here. I know I speak for him too, because we were just talking about this in the office the other day, how hard it is during hiring season when we're up in that corner of Vermont where we have, 90 degrees of the circle to recruit from. So that would be my 2 cents. I think on balance, we'd end up with less qualified candidates if we did it that way.
Okay, there was a lot of hands went up all at once. So I'm going to call on Joyce because I think it pertains to Peter's question. And then it was Toby, then Don.
Yeah, I just want to say I couldn't agree with Chris more about this because I am literally begging central office to get contracts out as soon as they can so that we can have the best pool possible, because we are at a disadvantage many times when we're hiring, and being able to move that process along is so important. And when we have an interview committee, we have interviewed candidates, we have them to come back and teach. I have never hired a new teacher without having them teach in our school. And it is a very thorough process. And to think, I mean, there are times we would have lost a candidate if we had to wait until a board meeting. And it's the most important, really. I mean, hiring the right people is so important, and we just can't wait for days. And I've had board members on my committees in the past. If people want to be a part of an interview committee, we could do that if we need to have board involvement. But to have to wait till a board meeting for approval, I just feel like, and I understand the responsibility that the board feels, but I also feel like we are we've been through the whole process, from the looking at the applications to the interviews to watching them teach. And it's not, I mean, I hope you can trust us and let us hire people when we make that recommendation without having to wait for a board meeting. I just look back over all the years, and we would definitely have lost people if we had to wait until a board meeting. And so I hear your concern and wanting to fulfill your role, but it's just got to be timely. And if there could be a quick meeting, I don't know. But with all the hiring that we have to do, I just don't see how that would be feasible to do it quickly.
Toby.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I really appreciate that, particularly coming from Joyce, because she's from obviously a smaller school in the district. I know in the past, in Swanton, our administration, we couldn't move fast enough to help them because of the reasons explained, the competitive market and wanting to get people on board. So I'm actually probably okay with the motion, but I can understand and appreciate the arguments against it as well. But my comment is more in general. I do appreciate this because it is the procedure for hiring. It lays out a procedure. So I kind of just went to our website and looked to see if that procedure would be tied to any policy that we have. And I don't see any relating policy, which is a bigger discussion. I'm kind of curious because I've been looking at a lot of comparing our policies to others, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but it all kind of ties in because that goes into the evaluation as well of our superintendent on how the superintendent is carrying out our hiring policy and her in this case, her procedure for doing so. So it all kind of connects, but again, why it's so important on the evaluation piece. But I'm in favor of the proposed motion that's on that procedure. I'm just curious where we're going to plug that procedure so people can see what we're doing. Because I don't see it fitting with any policy that we currently have, which is a bigger discussion, but that's my input.
Did you want me to answer that about the procedure? So we do have some procedures that are just standalone procedures. And we could discuss in the future if we want a policy on hiring. It's not one of the required policies, but certainly we could post procedure should the board accept it on the website.
Dawn, then Jay. Dawn, you're muted.
Go ahead, Jay. I spoke before and then I'll speak.
All right, thanks, Don. I'm just trying to make sure that I hit the right button at the right time on this laptop. I certainly want to express my agreement with both Chris and with Joyce. We are in a highly competitive market during the hiring season. And once we conduct our interview process and we make our recommendations to the superintendent, and then she follows up with either an in-person or, in this particular year, probably more likely a virtual or a phone conversation. And the candidate, time is clearly of the essence if we're going to be able to get the people that we need and not lose them not only to Chittenden County, where I think one of the task force reported probably within the last couple of months that on average, we're probably between $10,000 and $15,000 lower in our initial offering. But even locally here in Franklin County, whether it be to another school directly to the south of us that Julie is fairly familiar with, or even to our neighbors up in the Northeast. It is a very competitive market, and that's especially true when you're looking in subject areas, in our case, science and mathematics, and probably foreign language I would throw in there as well. So I would certainly like to lend my support to allowing the process that we've been using for the last couple of years under Julie's leadership to continue.
Yeshua, Jen, then Dawn.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, kind of like everybody else, I'm certainly in agreement about time is of the essence. And I've been on a lot of hiring committees, and I actually say that kind of unfortunately in the past time, the years I've been in education, but I have watched people slip through the hiring process because they've been offered a contract, and it's hours of work to hire someone. And I think it would be really hard if I, spent 7 to 10 hours to hire someone and all of a sudden we can't actually hire them. And the question I guess I would have for the board is, would there be a circumstance in which you would not take our suggestion of hiring someone? Because I'm just curious what that might look like. Like, I don't know why you would, and that's really just maybe I just don't know kind of thing. Because I would hope that, kind of like Joyce said, that you would trust that as building leaders that we are hiring the best candidate. And it's certainly an interesting conversation. We're having this now after looking at data and saying, we really want to see our data improved. And that is with good instruction and good hiring. And I do think one of the most important jobs we have as administrators is hiring people that we think are the best candidates, and that we can then improve our data for our students and have good instruction. So certainly, like everyone else is saying, I really hope we kind of give thought to that, I'm just, again, really curious about if you would have a point where you don't agree with someone that we're hiring. But thank you for allowing me to give that feedback.
Has everybody spoken, Chris?
Nope, Jen's next.
I wanted to say that I completely agree. When Chris was talking, Joyce, Jay, I completely respect any decision that you would make and that you would bring to Julie. And I support any decisions that you guys make. We're supposed to be able to trust you as a board to make good decisions. I've also noticed in the school system and outside of the school system that I agree as well that it's extremely competitive out there. We all are a small community, and we need to jump on to hiring people as quickly as we can. And once the recommendations have been brought to Julie, I think the thought of like having a school board member being part of that interview sounds nice. However, then you run into a time issue again, being able to get that school board member there for an interview might not always work. And so then you're going to run into another time crunch. Nice idea. Personally, I don't think it would work. That's it. I just wanted to say I support you guys and just wanted to give a little say.
Thank you, Jen. Go ahead, Don.
Okay, so I have a question. I guess I would start with Chris, and if he passes, he'll go to Joyce or Jay. Tell me a little bit about your process. So any one of you interview in your school. You want a math teacher or a third grade teacher. You do the interviewing at your school, right? Right? Wrong?
I would cede to Joyce as the most experienced person, and I think she'll probably speak to a similar process for all of us. So I know it went to me, but I'm going to go to Joyce.
Okay, so Dawn, basically we post the position as soon as, like, if I hear somebody's thinking about leaving, I post it as anticipated. We get the good pool of candidates, and we have an interview committee in the school made up of other teachers in the school. We did used to try to include a school board member, and Jen is absolutely right with what happened. It was just really hard for a school board member to be on the committee. And we would do an interview, and then we would narrow it down after interviews. I call references myself. I actually set up the interviews myself because a lot of times people don't, when you're just chatting on the phone, even setting up the interview, you learn about people. And then we have the interviews. And once we narrow it down from the interviews, we usually invite, at least 2, possibly 3 candidates back to teach. And they all do a similar lesson. And then we talk together, the committee who watched the teaching demos, and I meet with the teacher after they do the demo to talk about what they thought went well, what they didn't think went well, because obviously, they don't know the kids. But that is so informative too, because if it was a horrible lesson, and when I meet with them afterwards, if they go, whoa, that was horrible, and they can speak to why it was and what they would do differently. But if it was a horrible lesson and they say, well, that went really well, okay, we're done. But anyway, so after we do the teaching demo, we then hopefully can pick the best person. And it's so important because over all my years, like a lot of places now do the teaching demo. Not everybody used to do it. And I've been doing it for like 30 years. And there are times when we interview somebody that I think that's the best person. But then after I watch them teach, it could be a totally different person. So that is just such an important piece too. But as Yeshua said, it is a ton of time. And I call and spend a lot of time talking to references. And honestly, I have to say something that, and you know me, I'm just always going to be really upfront. Years ago, I said that hiring somebody is the most important thing I do. And if I couldn't be sure that I could hire the person that I thought was the best person for the job, that's not a place I'd want to work. And because I used to hear from people that, they had to bring 3 candidates to a school board, and then the school board would decide. And I was like, how can you do that? You're the people interviewing, you're the people that, hopefully are watching this person teach. And then you bring 3 candidates and you might not even think you want all of those people. And I just was like, that's a horrible process. But anyway, so I hope I'm not being, I just have to be honest. This is the most important thing.
Yeah, okay, I hear you. Let me tell you why I asked the question. And by the way, it's nothing about trust. I raised the issue because of law, not trust. Okay, but and I enjoyed this discussion, but I want to come back to something. Why I asked the question, and I think somewhere in there, Joyce, you may have answered it, but I'm going to ask you. You interview on a Thursday afternoon. They leave at 4 o'clock. Do you call Julie at 4:05 and say, this is a person I want? What happens? What happens next?
I still have to check references. If I haven't checked references, I still check references.
That takes a day,
And
a day or two?
pardon? Well, as soon as I can do it, because like I said, it's something that has to happen quickly. So as soon as I can get a hold of those references, and then I do contact Julie as soon as I can. But honestly, I try to keep her up to date as I'm going along, even to let her know who, and again, like especially like the last teacher we had to hire was for math and science. I mean, that is a really difficult position to hire for. So I try to keep her informed.
Okay. This is probably taking longer than we want to tonight, so maybe we pass the motion or whatever. But what I'm trying to figure out is how many days between the time you interview with your team and say, I want Jay Hartman to be my 6th grade teacher, it goes to Julie within a day, an hour, 2 days?
It is as fast as I can humanly do it. And if that's wrong, then I'm wrong. But it is as fast as
Joyce, we're not talking about right or wrong. I'm just trying to figure out the process. Because
I know, but I'm trying to say, if I can get a hold of, like sometimes I'll talk to references even ahead of time. And then if something comes up when I watch them teach, then I might call somebody back. But it is truly, if I can get to her at 4:05 and I've done everything I needed to do, I'll call her at 4:05. Okay. So it truly is as quickly as Julie, I can do.
All right. So Julie, do you check references or do you go just say that's good?
No, if you'll remember a few years ago, actually it was David Roddy who talked about how board members used to join interview committees, and the board discussed the fact that you wanted me to meet with every new candidate before they went to the board. So I, especially with the pandemic, actually, I love the virtual meetings because I don't have to figure out a time when somebody's going to drive up to Swanton. I can, depending on how quickly that applicant gets back to me, I can get to them on a dime and spend about half an hour meeting with them and talking about, I have sort of a set group of questions. So it depends on how quickly the individual responds. But if Joyce or Dina get to me with, this is my person, I am getting back to them as quickly as possible.
Okay. So the reason I asked that, it would seem to me, and I'm not saying tonight we're going to get a solution, but thinking of my experience.
Don, you just muted yourself.
Okay. We may not be able to get this resolved tonight. I think we need to pass a motion. But I really think the information that you've given me tells me that probably between the time Joyce or Jay or someone decides that somebody is a candidate, 1 or 2 days could pass. Now, when I was a principal or superintendent, I would call that person and I would say, I'm recommending you to the superintendent, or I'm going to recommend you to the board. But usually it was anywhere from 2 to 3 days from the night they interviewed to the time that I felt, maybe 2 days, that I'm ready to go. And if that's the case, then I think maybe we can stay within the law. I think we passed this motion, but that, if Joyce calls Julie and says at 4:05, I have a top candidate, then why can't we get an email just saying from Julie or somebody, I will have a candidate for you tomorrow night or Tuesday night or Wednesday night, and just Zoom it. I mean, you can call a meeting pretty quickly. I think you got 48 hours, 24 hours to call a special board meeting.
You're suggesting, Don, that every time they hire a new teacher, we have a special meeting?
I'm saying I think there's a process that we could put together that would expedite the process and still stay within the law. I'm not saying you're always going to have to have a special meeting. Most of the people probably will be hired while we're right here in the school year, and I think they'll probably come in batches. But I think I came in thinking that I wanted people to know the law, and I thought Julie has a solution. But the more the principals have talked, the more I think that the process isn't the interview ends and you offer a contract. There's a day or 2 or so in there. So anyway, we have to do what we have to do, but I want to make sure everybody understands the law. And at some point, there has to be action by the board.
Okay, well, I have a lot of hands up. So I believe Toby was first, then Bonnie, and then Terry.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Don. What I'm seeing now is the very real possibility of two motions. One, the motion that's highlighted yellow, and number two, I have questions about the procedure. Like, I don't want to approve of that procedure. And I think by rights, the board can task the superintendent with coming up with a procedure. And I think the board is still having some hesitancy with the procedure. And I think there's not uniformity, to be honest, right now across for our various principals. In that procedure that's listed, for example, it says hiring will follow MVSD internal procedures. So I guess what Don, I don't want to speak for Don, but what it's sounding like to me, and I have the same questions, what are those MVSD internal procedures? So what I think to move things along is we make a motion on that highlighted yellow part, and then we make a motion on tasking our superintendent to come up with a little bit more granular procedure for us all to consider at a future meeting that we can pass. Because the board by rights does have the okay to grant procedure. We can't really come up with the procedure. We can task our superintendent with doing that, and then we can either approve it or disapprove it. So I think that will help us move along. That's just my thought.
I agree with you, Toby.
Bonnie.
Well, I'm hoping that I can maybe help clarify some of our process and procedure a little bit. So central office tends to have involvement from the get-go. We have a position requisition process that all of our principals fill out when they're looking to fill a position. That goes to me, then Laura and Julie for approval before a position is posted. So we know what's open and out there from the beginning. Then when the principals are looking to interview, oftentimes they do contact me. I also check, where we're at in school spring and everything, so that if we do happen to have previous candidates or previous employees from other schools or things like that, that the principals may not be aware of, we can talk those things through. They reach out to me as soon as they find a candidate that they are highly interested in. So, and generally before the candidate even moves on to Julie, they've already spoken to me. So if a principal is ready to move a candidate forward in the hiring process, and that is the language that we stick pretty strongly to, if they're looking to move a candidate forward, I call them, we go through our process at the office, but then I call them, I discuss salary, benefits, and things like that, and make sure they're interested in moving forward themselves. Once they are, then I forward them on to Julie, and she meets with them. And once, she approves them for hire, then we draft a contract. And then in previous times, I have reached out to Chris to set up the contract signing and stuff. So hopefully that helps a little bit explain kind of the start to finish process and the involvement that we have with the schools right from the beginning.
No, thank you, because it helps me understand that there's even more time involved before Julie comes up with a final decision. So I think I'm with Toby. Maybe we've beaten this enough, but I think there's time in there that we can move quickly, but we can also make sure the board's involved.
Well, I've got more hands raised now. I still got Terry, then Steve, then Jay.
Actually, I'm okay. I just can't imagine. I would like to streamline it, make it as, I want to be legal like Don's, but I want to make it as easy for the principals and the supervisory, and for everybody involved, Bonnie, et cetera, make it as easy as possible. I can't believe that there's weighed down processes in every supervisory union in the state. Somebody's getting around this. And I loved your comment, Peter. Okay, I'd like to see us wrap it up too. Thanks.
Steve.
I'll be quick. I just want to say, Toby, I really appreciate what you said. John, I'm right behind you. I like what you said. And Mr. Palmer, I appreciate what you said too. And Joyce, you did a great job selling it. So I don't know. I think I'm changing my mind. So, and Bonnie, you take care.
Okay.
I guess it might be me, Chris, and I'm just gonna say very quickly, while what Bonnie was just saying, and I want to thank her for being a part of the conversation, sounds like a lot. The reality is, from the time that we conduct interviews, and we, as Joyce said, we may be checking interviews or references even before we do the interviews, especially if the candidate happens to be from Vermont. Vermont's a small state. There's a lot of us that know a lot of people around the four corners. The actual timetable of us interviewing, making a recommendation, working with Bonnie, working with Julie is literally probably about a 24-hour process. And again, speaking only for the high school, in many cases, if we take much longer than that, one of the things that I found out is after a real quality candidate exits or leaves following an interview, and we walk them to the door and we say, you know, we look forward to talking to you again, and we'll be getting back to you. Our superintendent will be getting back to you. They will often say, if they're the person that we want, just want you to know, I'm going down the road to another interview. And if they say they're going down the road, that makes me especially nervous.
Okay, at this time, I believe Toby has a couple motions.
Okay, I'll make, before I make the first motion, just so everyone knows, I will be making a second motion on tasking the superintendent with the coming up with administrative procedure. So with that said, I will make a motion to authorize the board chair, vice chair, if the chair is not available, to sign professional educator contracts on behalf of the board after the recommendation of hire by the superintendent.
Toby's the first, a second. Jen's a second. Any discussion? Terry.
Can I just double check? This is not going to create any kind of burden, right? This is what you all had asked for? Okay, thank you.
I don't see anybody else's hands up. So all those in favor of allowing the board chair or vice chair not available to sign, Jen, sorry, not Jen, Joanne. Oh, you're pre-voting. Okay. So all those in favor of, where was I? Allowing the board chair or vice chair, if the chair is not available, to sign teacher hires after approved by the superintendent, please raise your hand. Don, what's your vote? Or okay, and then so all those opposed.
I'm going to abstain on it till we get through the next step with the other one when that comes back, because I'm torn. I've worked with Julie and I think we're going, but the discussion that we've had in the last 15 minutes didn't help me make a decision. So I'm going to abstain on it, and I'm not voting against it, but I want to see how we come out with the procedures. And it, you know, the whole thing with trust just kind of got under my skin, because I think we trust people. This is a legal issue and we want to try to do it right.
Okay.
Don, I just want to say, Don, I wasn't trying to say, I apologize if that got under your skin. I am just so passionate about this, and I really do. And I just feel like we're all trying so hard and trying to hire the right people, and I wasn't trying to offend you or get under your skin. So I'm sorry if I did.
And I like all your information, but I think when Jack McCarthy was here, we followed a different procedure, right?
I can speak to that, Don. I can speak to that. We would authorize a motion to sign contracts, and the board chair or the vice chair could sign contracts, and we would sign them outside of the meeting, and then we would bring the names to the meeting, and they would approve them at the meetings. But the contracts, most of the time, were already signed if someone was being recommended to hire, so that we would not lose them. So that is the procedure we followed with Jack McCarthy.
Well,
And actually, in all my
I don't want to debate it tonight. All I know is Jack would bring in a list of the names and what positions that were being filled. And we'd approve it.
That's what we're
I've been
looking
on the
for.
board. That's the way we've been doing it too. But I do believe since I've been a chair, I've always pre-signed contracts, even when I was just on the Highgate board. But anyway, the motion went 7-0-1 with Don abstaining. And at this time, Toby wants to make another motion.
I will make a motion to task the superintendent to develop a written procedure for hiring licensed paraprofessional staff, taking into consideration some of the feedback we just provided, such as further defining MVSD internal procedures, with an emphasis on unity between all our schools that make up our district, and to come up with that procedure in 60 days. Julie, if you need more time, let me know.
Okay. I'm not going to repeat that whole motion. So a second for Toby's motion.
I'll second it.
Don's a second. Discussion. Terry.
I have a question. Toby, do you mean formalizing the process that's in place and making sure it's the same, consistent throughout the schools? Or do you mean something different, something new?
So, well, we have in our board packet a procedure for hiring of licensed professionals. I don't feel that it's granular enough for me, particularly in light of the motion we just passed. So I think it was Joshua brought up a good point, like why would we disagree with a recommendation from a superintendent or a principal? And my only objection would be, for example, if we didn't follow our own MVSD internal procedures. But we don't know what those are. I think Joyce did a great job. So if we can get what Joyce said in writing in a written procedure, or if we can get what someone else chimed in, I think HR.
Well, I think Bonnie had some good ideas.
But right, exactly. So if we can just get that codified a little bit better in the procedure, it will help us to ensure that our superintendent is following, there's no relating policy, but procedure. And therefore, I would have a great more amount of confidence in the motion we just passed, because we know then what those MVSD internal procedures are. So we have an expectation of our superintendent, whoever it is, that they're following the procedure they told us is the procedure.
Great.
So I think what we have there is a start. It's very good. But I think, Joyce spoke for all the principals, which is great. I think I just would like to see what Joyce has more codified for us. And what Bonnie said. And maybe what other, so Joyce, Julie could come back to us in 60 days with it more codified, another procedure. And then we can look at it and we could say, thanks, Julie, but it's still lacking. Or we'll say, thanks, Julie, that's it. You hit the nail on the head. We've given you enough. We feel that you can implement that procedure. And we'd like you to implement that procedure. And we have that motion to keep the process speedy for our superintendent and administrators looking to hire people quickly.
Dina.
All I wanted to say on behalf of Joyce, I don't think Joyce should do it alone, Toby. She did represent all of the administrators. And if you would like us all to get together and put something together, I think that's an appropriate thing for us to do.
Yes, exactly. That's why, tasking Julie with it, and she can come up with that, however strategy she wants to use with the administrative team. That's all on you all.
I just want to say that in the meantime, we will be having our renewal teacher contracts going out. So I want you to know that we would be having the chair sign those contracts. And then I will come back to you with a procedure for the April 6th board meeting. That will be no trouble. Our admin team meets every week. And Bonnie already has a flow chart.
Yeah.
I just threw 60 days out there. I think it's important, but you all have other work to do too. So.
In the meantime, any new hires will come before the board until before new hire contracts are signed, just so that we are clear about our process.
Okay, on that, are we ready to vote? Looks to be. All those in favor of Toby's motion to task the superintendent to come up with a more clear procedure of new hire licensed professionals, please raise your hand. Motion carries 8-0. Okay. I've lost my place. Oh, okay. Next up is administrative contracts. Once again, probable finding for executive session. Let's see. So moving on after that, other business, COVID updates.
Well, I just wanted to make sure the board knew we have, you should have received a letter today, an email today. We met with the Department of Health this week and reviewed data and spoke together, and it was determined that MVU students will return to their hybrid model of learning as of Friday. So White Day students will be back on Friday for in-person learning, and Blue Day students will be remote as usual, and their first in-person day will be Monday. And students who attended the Tech Center also were able to attend the Tech Center programming beginning this week. So it was tough. It was very disruptive for a lot of our kids and our families. But even though we know we will have cases, because Franklin County has a 5% positivity rate, we feel that the rate of cases coming in after these outbreaks has slowed so that it will be more manageable. Most people have finished their testing and quarantining phases for the first and the second wave of folks. And Swanton also had a case, and so there was a little confusion for some families about MVU versus Swanton, but hopefully it's going to be more manageable.
Peter.
Thank you. Thanks for that update, Julie. So I know we went through a rough patch there, so it's really good that at least we're getting back to the hybrid model. And I know from talking to you previously that you had started discussions about full-time learning again. Are we going to continue that, and what will it take for us to get there?
That's a perfect question. So we have been in those conversations. We have sort of a draft plan, but a lot of it is contingent upon the guidance that comes out soon. When I speak with Dan French this week, we expect him to reference new guidance. We hope to come out by the end of the month. Of course, we always are cautious. He'll often say the end of the month, and then it's the beginning of the next month. But we really hope that that does come out. We're not I know the CDC guidance just came out and made some changes, so we do expect them to reflect some loosening. The governor likes to talk about turning the spigot. So I think we do expect some of that. We've done some planning in terms of what things we might need. Are there materials? Are there desks? Are there things like that that we would need in order to bring more students back into classroom spaces? So we've been doing that work already. The other thing that would be important, however, is I would not want to bring students back to full-time instruction if we have a 5% positivity rate. So we would really be looking for a couple of things. We'd be looking for the guidance and our ability to meet that guidance, and in which ways, what's practical, what's not. And then we'd be looking at the level of positivity in our community.
Thank you, Julie. Not seeing any more questions or comments, so we will move. Oh, Luann.
Great, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to circle back around to my earlier comments that I know, is it Joanne, I think, had mentioned that I mentioned something. I don't really know what that was. You know, I don't know you, and a lot of you probably don't know who I am. And I have a 5th grader in Swanton, and I have a 7th grader at MBU. So that was my my takeaway from the information on the K-6 about having kids in person. It just kind of like sparked my like, man, I really hope that we're moving toward the 7 to 12 in person full time. So that's what that was all about. And for sure, like my mother-in-law was an educator for 30 years. Like I've got nothing but love and support, and I've always voted yes for the budget. So like, this is not a, like, it's not a lack of support. I actually want to support more so that we can hit the goals that we hope to have for our kids in our community. And I think it will be interesting to see what comes out, because with changes in spacing from the 6 to 3 feet, you know, the CDC's the high risk says you have to stay at 6 feet. That's at a 10% positivity rate. And like the state, even 3 weeks ago, we were still under that 10% mark. So I think that it's going to just be interesting on, you know, what is presented to us from Dan and Mark Levine and, you know, like all of those folks, because I agree, it felt like we had this increased positivity rate because of our experience has been so minimal with percentage of, you know, people that were sick in or who were positive in our community. But even at our, you know, highest and most kind of like unsettling time, we weren't even hitting the level that the CDC would say we need to stay at the 6%. So go school. I'm pro school. And thanks for everyone for all that you do all the time.
Thank you, Luann. Any other comments on the COVID updates? Seeing none, we'll move on to e-finance update.
Okay, I know Laura's been keeping you apprised of the various issues with Power School. There is a bill to delay implementation for those districts that have not implemented as of yet, and that's being discussed in the legislature. The Agency of Ed is also pushing back implementation for about 6 months for some of the rounds, and we've requested that we also be pushed back that 6 months in order to give Power School a chance to address some of these deficiencies that we're seeing, and hopefully we can move forward with a similar product to what we're using right now. But Power School's not there yet. So this will be another agenda item for next month as we keep you up to date on what's happening with our software transfer.
Thank you, Becky. Any questions or comments for that, for the e-finance? Seeing none, last under other business is a letter of resignation.
I double clicked my mute icon there. I just, in your drive, you see that there's a letter of resignation from a long-term sub educator, and that teacher's last day will be tomorrow. So we just wanted to keep you apprised of that. There is no action required, but we just want to keep you informed.
Thank you. Our future meeting dates, our next facility task force meeting is April 5th at 6:30 virtually. And then our next MVSD board meeting will be April 6th, also virtually at 6:30. There is some question on our following Tuesday meeting in April. It's during vacation week. Do we still want to have it on our Tuesday? Do we want to reschedule? It's the board's pleasure. Don?
I'm fine with whatever.
Toby?
I'm good with whatever. Chris, do we need to accept that letter of resignation or no? We're okay.
No.
We're good.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
I guess I would think that just maybe Julie and some of the administrators would be able to take some time off in April. I know it's been a challenging year to get days off, so I would support moving the board meeting so that they don't have to hang around on a Tuesday to come to meet with us.
Good point, Don. Good point.
When is vacation, Julie?
It is the week of the 19th.
So why don't we go the next week?
The 27th would be the next meeting.
Just a thought, Chris. No big deal, just a thought.
Everybody else good with the 27th? Well, then we would then have back-to-back weeks for meetings. We move it to the 27th, which isn't a bad thing. I'm just.
No, I don't care.
Okay, so as of right now, our next board meeting after April 6th is April 27th, which will be a Tuesday held at 6:30 virtually. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session unless anyone else has something to add during our open meeting.
Can I add one thing, Chris, if you don't mind?
Sure.
I had a question. I'm just curious because I forget the name of the bill that's talking about the money. Shoot, I wrote it down somewhere, but it's about the distribution of the money and people are looking at it. Shoot, H315, and maybe Don might know about that. With the, I was listening to what they were doing for distributing things in terms of how they're going to spend the money, and I noticed that I think they've got like 30 million, and I noticed that only 500,000 is going to mental health, and then 1 million is going to truancy. I think, yeah, 4 million to after school programs, 15 million for the updated ventilation. And I bring this up because I see it's 2.8 million going to the Department of Education to provide technical assistance for how schools are going to spend those funds. And I'm just trying to think, am I missing something? Is there anything we can do about it? Huh?
Terry?
Yes.
Call Senator Randy Brock.
Yeah.
He's on the Finance Committee in the Senate.
Okay.
I doubt if your call is going to make a lot of difference.
Yeah.
You never know. Sometimes 2 or 3 voices can open up a big debate.
Okay, because I mean, 500,000 for mental health and 2.8 to help us figure out how to spend the money. Anyway, okay, thank you, Don. I will.
Okay, so at this time, I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session, inviting in Julie.
And could we invite in Bonnie at least for part of it?
Yes.
What's the purpose?
Unless anybody would like me to stay, I will probably head home. At this point, I'm very happy to stay if anybody else has questions or if you would prefer.
I feel confident that you can head home. We will discuss everything with Don was on the hiring committee, as you know, and I think he can answer our questions. If not, we'll have Julie reach out tomorrow.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure to see you all tonight. Thank you.
It was nice meeting you.
Yes, thank you for
Bye,
sticking
Chris.
with us.
Good night.
Yeah. And bye, Luann. You too. It was nice to see you. Thank you. And is Lauren still there?
He had left.
Toby, the purpose would be for discussion of administrative contracts.
Gotcha. I just wanted that clarified in the minutes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, all those. Wait a minute. I don't think I got it for first. So who's the first for? Terry's the first. Second.
Bye, guys.
Right.
Right.
Steve's the second. We're inviting in Bonnie and Julie. All those in favor, raise your hand. 7, 8. The motion carries 8-0. We are going into executive at 9:04. Come out of executive session at 9:37. And first up, I would entertain a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to hire Chris Dodge for Swanton Elementary principal.
Chris, I want to make that motion on behalf of the interview committee that unanimously supported the recommendation of the superintendent to hire Chris Dodge as recommended by the superintendent with salary and benefits.
Okay. Don's the first, Toby's the second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 8-0. Don.
I move that all administrative staff and other related staff that Bonnie put forward, because I don't think they're all administrators, maybe most of them were. There might have been a few like Robert that weren't. But the salary increase for the 21-22 school year be as recommended by the superintendent and as recommended by the superintendent.
Don's the first. Need a second? Toby's the second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 8-0. So unless anybody else has something else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at.
Can I just say thank you?
At 9:30.
Before we adjourn, Chris, can I just thank you all for the letter, because Swanton is putting the pause on that land. So thank you.
For 1 year, I see that.
Julie, I do have a question before we leave. We have another whole group of people that aren't administrators, aren't teachers. I guess they're hourly rate employees in your office, non-union.
Correct. We have non-union in central office and in the schools.
Okay. I would think that they would stay, they would receive the increase as discussed with the administration, the percentage.
Yes, we usually will bring that to you at a future.
Bring that back separately? Okay. All right, good. Thank you.
We just needed to get the administrative contracts out. Principals and administrators have dates in their contract.
Okay, I just want to forget the non-union people.
Nope, they're coming up.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'll make a motion that we end this meeting so we can go to bed.
I second it.
Second that.
All those in favor, raise
We all
your hand.
agree.
We are adjourned. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks.
Night, everybody.